Good morning. This is Chair French, and I am convening the Commission's regularly scheduled business meeting for today, Tuesday, February 16th, 2021. I am joined by my fellow commissioners, Commissioner Duffy and Commissioner Keene, and we will jump into our agenda at this time. We have 25 consent agenda items, one noticed item, and one discussion item. Our first item is the consent agenda. Commissioners, you've had an opportunity to review the consent agenda and all the proposed orders on it. Do you have any questions on the consent agenda? And I will start with Commissioner Keene.
None for me, thank you.
Commissioner Duffy.
I do not, and I would like to move approval and adopt the consent agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the items on the consent agenda. Any further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor, please vote aye.
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 Aye. The consent agenda is approved. We will now move to our noticed item. This is in docket number 20 EPDE 459 TAR, and it is a proposed order on unanimous settlement agreement. And our presenter for this item is Lauren Loshman.
Morning, Commissioners.
Morning.
Before you is an order approving Empire's, Curbs, and staff's unanimous settlement agreement with modifications. Empire recently discovered a third-party vendor overcharged commercial customers credit and debit card fees and undercharged residential customers. After discovering its third-party vendor charged fees not approved by the Commission, Empire filed an application requesting Commission approval of a proposed tariff, revising the third-party charge for customer credit and debit card transactions. The parties submitted a unanimous settlement agreement. The order grants the settlement agreement with modifications. The order does not approve Empire's proposed tariff at this time and does not approve the parties' agreements regarding deferral and recovery due to the COVID-19 pandemic. The order approves the agreement regarding repayment to commercial customers with interest in lieu of a penalty because Empire voluntarily reported its violation. Empire did not receive a benefit from the overcharges, and the charge to residential customers resulted in a savings to residential customers. Additional details regarding the settlement agreement with modifications may be found in the order. With that, I recommend approval of the order and will stand for questions.
Thank you, Lauren. Do we have any questions? And I'll start with Commissioner Keene.
None for me, thank you.
And Commissioner Duffy.
Yes, Lauren, it's my understanding that there's another docket in which the Commission will review and approve the new charges, correct?
Presumably, I mean, staff has not filed a report yet, but there is a new third-party vendor that Empire is using, and there is another docket addressing those charges that are actually occurring, or they're not actually occurring now because there's a waiver due to COVID, but with the agreement with the current third-party vendor.
Right. And the date set right now for us to respond is
it's end of May is when the suspension order is in effect.
Right. There are other items in that docket too. It's my understanding. Is that correct?
I'm not sure which items you might be referring to, but this in the order before you, there's indication that yes, there is some discussion in that order about waiving credit card fees and deferral due to COVID.
Okay.
Just
right.
Similar to this docket, but just addressing them at that time.
Okay. I do have some concern that this has been kind of a pattern of behavior where the new agreements have not kept up with what the ratepayer, the customer, actually sees, even though in one instance it was to the benefit. So I'm hopeful that with this next docket that we deal with, that we'll be able to get everything squared away. But in the interim, this is an order that we need to issue at this time. And with that, I would move approval of the order.
Second.
A motion and a second to approve the proposed order in this docket. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor of approving the order, the proposed order, please vote aye.
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 Aye. Motion passes and the order is approved. Thank you, Lauren. We will now move to our last agenda item. And let me first say, I have to apologize to Christina, who's here and going to help give the presentation, and others. This is probably not the SPP update. You all wanted this time to clarify. This is an update on sort of the SPP quarterly meetings and discussions that have been taking place sort of over the last 2 or 3 weeks. This does not cover recent events. So I'm sure we will all be looking forward to the next SPP quarterly update. So with that, I'm going to start sharing my screen. I have the presentation. Our plan was for Christina to do this update, but I think she is just on the phone and may have trouble seeing the slides. So Christina, would you like me to run through the presentation and for you just to provide context, or would you like to present? If you could unmute yourself briefly.
I can go through it. It's more your preference, Chairperson French. So I just won't know which slide you're on. So.
Well, maybe I will run through it. Yeah, I appreciate the difficulty of trying to do it over the phone. And since I'll be sharing my screen, I will just run through it. And there may be points where you could provide us some additional context, but we should be able to go through this pretty quick. So thank you.
Okay.
All right. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Good.
Yes, I can. Thank you.
All right. So as I said, this is an update on recent SPP activities. Some of this will be familiar to you because it's add-ons to previous updates you've seen. It's just updates on those activities. So as I said, this is primarily an update on our most recent quarterly meetings at the Southwest Power Pool. On January 25th, we had our regional state committee meetings. Those included an educational session that was several hours in the morning, a couple-hour business meeting in the afternoon, followed by what we call our joint stakeholders meeting, which followed our business meeting. And that is a joint meeting that the regional state committee, made up of commissioners, has with the SPP board of directors. And it's sort of it's a good opportunity for us to receive briefings on current events at SPP and to have a joint interchange of ideas. And then on January 26th, we had the SPP Board of Directors and Members Committee meeting. So, one of the first big items we've been tracking at SPP, and we got an update on this at the RSC meetings, is what we call the HITT C2 initiative. This is something we've discussed in the past where we're creating a narrow process for wind-rich areas to look at smaller transmission lines that would normally be allocated mostly to their area. But if they can make their case that those lines are actually being used to serve other areas by distributing power to those other areas, then they can apply for regional allocation. So this is it has not been an approved process, but it's a process that it's been approved at SPP, but the update is that SPP is in the process of crafting the tariff and filing that tariff language at FERC, who will ultimately be approving this process. So that is the update, is that it is moving forward and will be filed at FERC for approval. The next item is the HITT C1 initiative. This is an initiative to combine pricing zones. So when we talk about these smaller sort of local zones, local sort of the legacy utility areas, that is normally the basis on which these smaller projects are allocated. They're allocated to those specific zones. But we have recognized that power is flowing differently than it used to in the past, that you maybe are not just flowing power around your local area, that power is coming from dispersed generation resources throughout the state and throughout the region and is being moved across zones. And so there has certainly been a proposal that we start merging these zones into larger zones for new projects, to recognize that a project that's built, for instance, in Western Kansas may have benefits and be serving folks, for instance, in Kansas City. So there is this proposal to combine zones. I will say that this initiative has become, quite, there is not a lot of agreement, basically. And we have stakeholders that are not aligned, because, I think folks are rightly cautious that there could be cost shifts that come out of this. Anytime you start to merge a pricing zone, you are bringing potentially costs that would be allocated to one zone and spreading them into some other zones, and sharing costs instead of specifically moving them to one area. So, this is something right now that I, as our delegate, I am supporting this initiative. I haven't seen anything to tell me that it's the wrong thing to do. Everything about the physics of the system tell me that this is the correct thing to do. But there is sort of a consensus right now to slow down, try to get more data, more study, so that folks can get more comfortable with this and understand what the impacts might be before we move forward with it. One thing I would note is that I think this is really just limited toward forward-looking new investments, new transmission costs. So folks, I think, should have some level of comfort with that. We're not looking to reallocate all the existing costs in the region. This is for new items.
So if I can ask, if there's when you talk about moving to a larger region, consolidation to a larger region, that would be outside the confines of the state of Kansas, correct? It would include a pricing zone, would perhaps include folks in Arkansas or Oklahoma. Is that correct?
That's a good question. I can tell you there are numerous different configurations being considered. Some configurations would maybe just combine all the zones in Kansas, or combine the zones in Kansas plus the western side of Missouri. I would say those are the more typical ones I've seen. But yes, you could see combinations of Kansas with Oklahoma. I don't recall if there are configurations that do that. There are still going to be some breakdowns. We're not going to combine everybody, but the ones I have seen have been more combining the zones in Kansas, maybe with the zone of Missouri.
Okay, so last year there was a vote to approve all the projects, like wind development projects going forward, would not just be charged to Kansas. It would be spread out to entities that are partaking of the benefits. Is that different than this?
So I don't know if I know exactly which item you're talking about. I mean, but yes, I do think that part of what this is trying to understand that when you put in some lines to support new dispersed generation that's going online, say in Western Kansas, those lines are probably not being built for the benefit of folks in Garden City primarily. I mean, they will get some benefit from it, but those lines are also necessary to help flow power to big load centers that are going to be using that wind power. And so that is the idea of this, is that it would more equitably share those costs with the folks who are actually going to use that power that's being supported. Now, I will say, I mean, there are other concepts here. I mean, if you're talking about the specific costs of a generator coming in, let's say a wind farm coming in, for the most part, those are directly assigned to those generators. If they are costs that SPP in our region didn't need to incur otherwise, and they are only required by that wind farm, those get directly assigned to them. There are some nuances, though. We probably don't need to get into it right now, but there are some nuances where sometimes, you know, the region will build a project to support, you know, congestion that we needed anyway, and it also fixes the, you know, makes it available for a wind farm to come online there. And I think there are ongoing discussions and controversy over, look, when we as a region make an investment and it happens to allow some of those folks to come on and not incur directly assigned costs that they otherwise would have, you know, how do you break up those costs? And so those are ongoing discussions. That's actually part of the script discussion that we'll talk about later.
Is there a subset of consideration here, Mr. Chairman, with regard to these pricing zones that would perhaps break out the impact it would have on jurisdictional versus non-jurisdictional utilities?
Are you speaking of our jurisdictional versus our non-jurisdictional?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
I don't think so, because you've got to remember, in SPP land, everybody's jurisdictional because they're all jurisdictional to the FERC for transmission. So when we're talking about transmission planning and cost allocation, you know, it's a little bit of a different world for me, because while we don't set, for instance, the rates of Sunflower Electric and their co-ops here, the retail rates, we are very much involved in what their transmission planning and cost allocation is at SPP, just as much as we would be involved in Evergy or any other entity. So not necessarily for me. Let me just tell you, as a policy matter and how I see my involvement at SPP, I am not there on behalf of sort of the Evergy customers or the jurisdictional utilities. I am there on behalf of all Kansans, and I'm there to balance the interests of all Kansans, whether they are Kansans who pay KCC jurisdictional retail rates at our level or not. So I hope that answers the question.
It does. It does. I think at the SPP level, I grasp the distinction you're alluding to. Thank you.
Let me move forward. This item, I know you'll all want the update on this, and this is the one item that might actually have some relevance to items that are going on right now. So this is the SEAMS Liaison Committee. It says it on this slide, but this is a committee that was formed by the Regional State Committee of SPP, which I am on, and the organization of MISO states, which is sort of our sister organization in MISO. And it was formed to identify issues and potential solutions with SEAMS issues. And so the SEAMS issues are items that are occurring in the interconnections between SPP and MISO, and challenges we've had flowing power between the two regions. The SLC has been doing its work for quite some time now, I think over a year. And they did finally come with a series of final recommendations for the RSC to review and approve at our quarterly meeting. I will tell you, we had lengthy debate on these recommendations and did not approve them at our quarterly meeting. But just last week on Friday, we did approve a series of recommendations, a formal document. And that it sort of discussed 7 distinct issues that we'd like folks to explore further. And I will say some of those were prioritized much more than others. And this does get into the weeds, but let me just show you. I will show you the document we approved, just very briefly. All right, can you see my Word document?
Yes.
Okay, this is the document that was approved. And I would say that this is, we have identified the issues here. They are sort of in the order of importance, I think. I think there could be, I would probably say interregional planning is above rate pancaking. Some of the prioritization is that we think some of these items, are urgently important to address. Some things are important, like I would say rate pancaking is pretty important, but the issue with that and why it probably gets placed lower is there are not very many readily available solutions to that. It is a really tough nut to crack because essentially, the issue with that is as you start to maybe de-pancake rates or give folks discounts to move power across different regions, you've got to make sure that anything you don't charge those folks doesn't get pushed back on existing customers. So I just give that as an example that's a really difficult issue. But there are some specific recommendations here. None of these are approving a specific, move forward action plan other than we are, asking them to, or directing some bodies to move forward and start to come up with ideas on some of these specific items. And let me just say, I think the interregional planning is going to become maybe more important. If you've been following, some of the load curtailment issues that we've had at SPP recently, the situation, at times we've been saved from rolling blackouts because we were able to import power from MISO in pretty large amounts at times. But then because there are not robust lines between these RTOs and those lines got overloaded, we lost the ability to import, and that did have the effect of us then being at a capacity deficit. And so there will certainly be discussion of whether there needs to be more robust interregional planning and transmission. Make sure if one region can't meet its load obligations, that maybe others could be called upon to help. And it's not just between us and MISO. It's ERCOT would love to have some of our power at times, and I think we were unable to send them some of that power due to our constraints moving power south. So certainly wasn't planning to be part of my discussion, but I think the SEAMS discussion is timely right now, and I don't have much more to update you on the SEAMS issues, but just to know that there is certainly work ongoing on those issues. Go ahead.
If I could, Chairman French, but the way I read the reports coming from SPP, the SEAMS committee has failed 4 times. And they really did state that this last time was a failure again. And I know in my little simple mind, to me, this is pretty straightforward. Identified where there are clogs in the system and they need to be improved. And so therefore, to me, it's like, let's work the plan. I really struggle to understand and to prioritize what would be most beneficial from our standpoint. And we can't do everything at one time, but I really struggle as to how we just can't get some agreement with with this other RTO. And I'm referring to MISO. I'm at a loss.
Well, those are good comments. Let me take it, from the start. I know there have been initiatives in the past. I do think this seems liaison committee, is sort of a recognition that some of those hadn't passed. I mean, I think this is the first time that the state regulators have gotten together and formed a committee to try to push this forward. And I think it has given much more visibility. So, I do expect to see action coming out of these recommendations. And then there is also a new joint study going on by SPP and MISO, which certainly started with a recognition that they haven't made concrete progress. So yes, there's a history of these items not being addressed. I'm hopeful that some of these new initiatives are built on those failures and are recognitions of those failures and are gonna move forward. You make a good point, that we have not made progress on SEAMS issues. I think it's a case of nobody has the right incentives. Everybody's worried about the benefits flowing to the other one and costs falling on their ratepayers. I do think the calculus may change a little bit when you have a situation like what we've had yesterday and today, and folks might understand or at least be willing to give further evaluation to whether there are real concrete benefits to being able to flow power between and among the different regional transmission organizations. So, given the history, I don't think any of us are making promises that everything's going to be fixed between these regions, but I think there are concrete initiatives going on, and I think current events are going to, just add fuel to that.
Thank you.
I'm going to pull back up the SPP update. All right. All right. The next item, and I think we're getting close to the end here. This is just an update on the script working group. I spoke about that earlier. It is a major initiative going on to talk about the transmission planning process. It probably touches every possible area of SPP, but frankly, there's not a lot to update you on right at this moment. I think the update is that we are having lots of meetings, and we continue to meet, and we're expecting to complete and have sort of concrete recommendations in the third quarter of this year, probably around October. So there will definitely be more updates on that working group in the future. Then finally, there was an SPP Board of Directors and Members Committee meeting. The Western Energy Imbalance Service was approved at the FERC. And you'll see the next bullet point is that those folks that are participating in that energy imbalance service have now asked to join SPP. And so there are going to be lots of discussions, open forums on what that would mean for SPP and its current members to understand the costs and benefits of adding new states to our region. So those will be ongoing. Myself and several staff members have filed non-disclosure agreements that will give us access to confidential information to understand that cost benefit analysis. The final item, and this was subject to a lot of debate at the board meeting, is a large transmission line that the board was asked to approve. But Evergy asked them not to approve it because Evergy is constructing a separate project in the exact same area or very near the same area. And so their position is that the SPP approved line is unneeded. So Evergy the line was approved, but Evergy is going to be filing a request to restudy that. Our staff is looking at this really carefully. We've looked at the presentations provided by SPP and by Evergy to try to understand, what is going on here? Do we need both lines? What is the reason, when there was an SPP line, what is the reason that Evergy decided to rebuild its line in this process when it knew the SPP directed line was coming? So there is a lot to learn here, a lot of discussion. We, of course, just want to make sure that the investment that's made is just and reasonable and necessary to provide service. We aren't creating redundant resources here. But that was an item of much discussion at the board meeting.
And Chairman French, this is what concerns me, that, all right, Evergy went ahead and constructed, but knew that there was one in the offing. This is what I thought SPP was supposed to really prevent. And that before anybody got too far down the pike on actual construction or whatever, that is vetted somewhat with the SPP to ensure, like you're saying, there's not this duplication of effort. So I'm
Voicing your
not understanding.
Yeah. And that is why I have asked the staff to look at this more carefully and try to understand it, because you're voicing a lot of concerns I had. Let me say though, the Evergy did feel this was a local reliability issue, and the specific line that they decided to rebuild was 100 years old. So I think they said it experienced some of the most reliability issues of any line on their system. So I am certainly not here questioning, whether there are reliability issues in that area, whether maybe that line needed to be rebuilt. I don't think anybody expects a transmission line to last, that long without some reinvestment. But yes, we need to understand, why was there so little coordination between Evergy and SPP? Why did they decide to go forward and do this project as a local reliability project instead of the SPP project? Maybe it was cheaper. That could certainly be the case. But it was, for me, a little alarming to see this much disagreement between the Evergy representatives and the SPP staff at a public board meeting of the Southwest Power Pool. I think we all would have liked to see better coordination and understanding of, why is there so much confusion? So our staff will be looking at that. I would not be surprised if they have some discussions with Evergy to better understand it, because I share your concern. I think we'd all like to understand it better.
Okay, and I would like to be updated on the staff's review into this issue. That would be much appreciated. Also, on the order 222 from FERC, it's my understanding, for example, MISO is moving very quickly on this. The time frame is pretty short, and so I'm hoping that SPP is moving with all urgency. As I really fault FERC for making an order on such a short time frame. So again, this is an issue that I think we need to stay abreast of as commissioners.
Yeah, and the quick update I'd give on this is, as you see here, SPP has created a task force. They have put some of my fellow state regulators on that task force. I'm on quite a few working groups, and so that was not one that I joined, but that task force is going to be giving us regular updates as that work goes. We do expect the most recent update we have gotten is that, yes, they are moving quickly. Probably their filing with FERC is going to be, more of a framework, and it's going to become more robust and workable, as time goes on. There is also a chance that SPP and other RTOs may ask for additional time from FERC. I think that's somewhat likely. That they'll ask for at least some amount of extra time, if not a more lengthy amount of time, but probably at least a short extension. So the work is ongoing. We are going to get regular updates. So that's an item that I expect we'll have updates for you at future quarterly updates. Just finally, the SPP COVID-19 update is their meetings continue to occur only online. We are looking at starting to mix in some in-person meetings in the summer, but of course, these things are always subject to change, and we're all just staying flexible. And when we're able to start traveling and meeting in person safely, that's when it will occur. So that, I believe that brings us to the end. Christina, did I miss anything, or did I give your presentation adequately? We may have lost Christina.
Mr. Chairman, I would proffer that you did so quite adequately. I appreciate very much the information, your overview, your insights into some of the nuances that are at work within the SPP. It's very, very helpful. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
I would add to that. I know this occupies a lot of your time. If there, and staff's time, if there's anything that Commissioner Keene and myself can do, please let us know, because this is a lot of the future of the KCC and the state of Kansas as a whole. So let us know. Also, at this time, I'd like to report that after 3 hours, our power has come back on. So this is not the 30 minutes that was reported with the TV and radio stations, or put out there by the company, the 30 minutes to an hour. This was a 3-hour ordeal. And in our house, where we had turned it down to 62 the night and had not turned it back up, 50 degrees is pretty cold. We can handle it, but I know a lot of folks in our neighborhood have health problems and small children. And to be without power for 3 hours is a long time, especially when you did not prepare for it. Like a simple thing of a cup of coffee or a thermos, make some oatmeal for kids to eat or whatever. So I'm really disappointed that it was a 3-hour turnoff.
Sorry to hear that. Well, we certainly hope everyone is staying safe, and I hope, we're getting close to the end of any blackouts that are occurring across the region. And I expect we'll be getting some updates on this as we move out of our meeting. So everyone, please stay warm, stay safe. Get your house heated back up now. Is there any further business to come before us today?
I move to adjourn.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adjourn the business meeting. Those in favor, please vote aye.
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 Aye. We are adjourned. Thank you all.
Take care.
Thank you.